Tender lumplings everywhere. Happy Spooktober. Apologies for the lack of uploads these past couple months. I feel like the Matrix is actively trying to keep me from making videos and getting my thoughts out. Like, I got pretty close with one battle after another. Still might release that. I'm editing it. I've got a Halloween special I've failed to make for 2 years now. I wrote it a couple years ago. A couple commentary review uploads. And throughout the summer, I did see Naked Gun, Weapons, Jurassic World, and Toxic Avenger opening weekend. Intending to make a stop for a thought, if not in the summer catch-up. But we know how that goes. Maybe I'll do them at the end of the year, or comment below if you think I should still release those, since those projects are sitting collecting dust in the $200 I've now spent, or I should say now wasted, on Adobe services these past few months. So comment below if you're interested in seeing those come to life. But for now, for relevancy's sake, we're doing Tron Ares. Tron Ares is Disney's second soft reboot of the Tron IP, since plans with the sequel director fell through years ago. Replacing him is king of mid to shit live action Disney films, Norwegian filmmaker Joachim Ronning, with plans to not continue the original story and instead make another reboot that doesn't really have anything to do with Tron himself, featuring underbaked characters, a kind of cool threat, maybe a couple new interesting ideas, and a couple pointless cameos, all with much less substance and coherence than the last film. But that's okay. Did you hear that Nine Inch Nails is going to be doing the score? Yeah, that'll get butts in seats. I'm not here to bash Tron, okay? I've always admired Tron from afar, as a franchise, I don't think there's anything really quite like it. Conceptually, it's got a lot of unique ideas back when studios actually took chances on original ideas. It's not only the first to have entirely CG environments with like motion-tracked cardboard, but it's also one of the first to have a story taking place entirely in like a digital cyberspace with players and programs, which I've always admired as being quite ahead of its time, because if you look now, everybody's fucking playing video games. For how innovative the effects were for 1982, you'd think surely they'd win an Oscar for it, or even get a nomination, but the competition that year was Blade Runner, Poltergeist, and E.T., and apparently the Academy had yet to consider CGI proper visual effects, so they were disqualified, which is hilarious to me, because if you look at that category post 1986 or just the 80s in general, you're going to struggle to find films doing effects practically without CG, which is kind of unfortunate now. Despite being quite an ambitious film from an exciting era for movies, a lot of people clown on the original Tron for being boring and dull, and I'll admit, I've never actually seen Tron 1982. I later became more familiar with the 2010 sequel, reboot, however you want to put it, Tron Legacy. And man, apart from a couple action sequences, the visual effects, and the score, there was nothing gluing me to this movie as a 7-year-old. I remember thinking it was too long and just too boring. Could have been that I just didn't get some of the story without the context of the first, but nowadays, I think I must have been smoking child crack, because when I went to go rewatch this movie now, I had a whole ass experience. That film was truly one of a kind, with an actually interesting story told in linear fashion with a clear protagonist journey and a solid antagonist. Along the way, we meet well-written characters, expand the story and world building perfectly, all before resolving multiple story arcs. And if you aren't sold yet, this film was directed by Joseph Kosinski, who went on to direct the Top Gun sequel and F1 from this year. He's a pretty acclaimed director, and this was his first. And it's honestly a little bit baffling to me that it's not rated higher. Also, it goes without saying that that film is solely carried by the Daft Punk score. In the last couple of years, I've been a huge listening fiend of theirs, but this is an entirely elevated form of composing, making for one of the best scores to any film, and one I find myself throwing on a lot. I can honestly make a whole video just gushing over how I fell in love with this movie, flaws and all.
Flynn! Am I still to create the perfect system? Yeah.
So you can imagine my excitement seeing the announcement for the sequel at D23 a couple years ago, especially when I saw that Nine Inch Nails was behind the synth track blessing my ears. However, I'll be the first to admit that any excitement I had for this film was killed slowly and more with every trailer that I saw, to the point where any expectations I had going in were largely numbed and dumbed down to just generally believe that this film was going to suck and would be clearly inferior to the previous two. And that mentality going in allowed this to perhaps exceed my timid expectations a little bit, because this film is definitely not as bad as I was prepared for it to be. Though I can't speak to your average Tron fan's experience with this one, for me it's definitely better than my dampened expectations. But it's still not spectacular, so please let me explain. Ares, played by Jared Leto, was the name of a program created by evil Julian Dillinger, now Evan Peters instead of Cillian Murphy. At Dillinger Corporations, it rivals Kevin Flynn's company Encom from the previous stew. From stealing his codes to attempting to monetize his game, they are at it again, this time after a code that would exceed a time limit to which objects materialized from the grid can exist in our reality beyond 24 minutes or something like that. Since the bad guys want to digitize military weaponry and sell it, while the good guys want to digitize things to solve like world hunger and shit, which I'll say, pretty cool setup. I didn't hate that. Where part of this film falls short is in how they rush a lot of the underwritten characters and just detract from the plot, since competing for digitized permanence and apparently the spotlight is Eve Kim and her annoying colleagues at some video game company, which I had to Google because they're genuinely that forgettable. First of all though, I'm gonna try and be nice. What I liked about this film is that it's actually paced pretty well. I wasn't really checking my watch and I was surprised that they kept it under 2 hours, and in that time, they do a pretty solid job catching you up on the world of Tron, introducing the main new concepts and the villain before trying to have as much fun as it can, and in that, I found a rather accessible, entertaining popcorn movie that I was able to seamlessly follow thanks to a reasonable pace and a pretty simple story. Also, it goes without saying that once again this film is entirely carried by the score. I know I've talked about Trent Reznor's scores before on this channel, it's no secret that I'm a fan, but here it's really just a nice blend of what he's perfected before, like you hear some of the Social Network, there's some synth sounds, and with some other beats reminiscent of the previous Daft Punk score, which really elevates the tone, transform the scenes, and overall just really helped to amplify the experience, because I was pretty much vibing out the whole time, and I actually tricked myself into liking a couple of action sequences. Additionally, the visual effects were quite well done too. There's lots of micro computing shots, a good use of neon colors, and for as little as we see the grid, it looked properly surreal, especially when seeing a recreation of the retro 80s program. I just wish we could have spent more time in it. However, apart from that though, like I said before, there are just a few things that personally bother me. Regarding the plot, I think they might have just played it a little too safe, since overall, it's not nearly as daring as what we've seen from the franchise. Between Acts 2 and 3, generally speaking, there's only really the threat of AI that's hunting down the main characters, but I never really felt like they were the better antagonists to focus on, apart from being temporary obstacles to create action sequences. Sure, the threat is apparent, but what's particularly frustrating to me is just kind of how artificial and needless and tedious things start to become just to create these moments. Furthermore, some of the editing was pretty frustrating to me, given just how much cross-cutting takes place. And I do remember saying the same thing when I talked about Mission Impossible earlier this year, but I could think of like 2 or 3 scenes when it's cross-cut between more than a couple occurring sequences, instead of just focusing on one unfolding scene after another, which seems really desperate to hold your attention. And I find when a film is too desperate to hold your attention, it kind of loses you in failing to be thorough. And if you compare it to the last film, I take the more realized adventure plot with linear storytelling, allowing moments to linger with you, over jumping around and not letting you appreciate the moment-to-moment sequences any day of the week. Like, I swear to God, if this is where we're heading because of attention span, we're cooked. Movies are cooked. Regarding performances, I honestly was expecting a little more layers from Jared Leto, since everyone knows he likes to go full method, even in bad films, but honestly, he's just fine at playing a soulless artificial intelligence. Any twist or edge I was kind of expecting this character to have is just kind of missing. Yet he's like one of the main characters. Movie's named after him, so I think he could have done with a little bit more personality besides liking 80s rock, but that is to blame the writers for. Additionally, I wasn't expecting to see Gillian Anderson from X-Files, who's Evan Peters' mom. She's doing an accent for some reason, and I think I saw Cameron Monaghan too, but apparently they just cut his screen time way the hell down. Giving the best performance though is arguably Evan Peters as the head of Dillinger Industries. He gets to do a lot as a smarmy, careless, rich tech villain, but with such an ensemble, trying new things with their performances, it kind of makes the bland protagonist performance stick out. I honestly found she didn't really carry the film the way a main protagonist should at all. Like, I think it would have really helped their case if she had just more characterization, or at least more of a stake in the plot, because my eyes would just glaze right the fuck over anytime she or her annoying tech team did like anything. Like I said, they're definitely playing it a lot safer than what we've seen before from this franchise, which for me kind of left things to be desired. I think they probably could have and should have gone further, but apparently we're setting up for future films, so I guess we'll just have to see where that goes. However, at the same time, I can kind of respect it for keeping it non-convoluted and for being the most mainstream of the 3. It's definitely accessible, and plus under 2 hours is kind of hard not to recommend nowadays. Whatever problems I'm having with it could just be that of my own. It's pretty fine, it's pretty alright, so I'm giving Tron Ares a 6.4 out of 10. And if you're curious what I would give the last one, it would be north of an 8, maybe even creeping into a 9. Thank you so much for watching my video. Apologies for the delay and for not uploading for a couple months. Like I said, I've been incredibly busy. I have been working my ass off on a Halloween special. I wrote it a couple years ago though, so maybe third year's the charm. We'll see. Also comment below if you've seen Tron Ares, your thoughts on it, your thoughts on the franchise, if you like the previous one as much as me, I sure did. Or how about the original? Have you seen the original? What's your favorite Tron? Like if you want to show support, if you want to see more of my videos on your feed, please subscribe. I will stick around on your feed. That helps me out a huge amount. But yeah, that's it. Remember to wear your seatbelt, wash your hands, and happy Halloween, guys. See you in the next upload, maybe for the Halloween special. We'll see.